Welcome to the Life Coaching Podcast, your go-to source for inspiration, transformation, and actionable insights. I am your host, Angel Gonzalez, and I am thrilled to have you on this journey towards personal excellence and empowerment. In each episode, I dive deep into the realms of life coaching, wealth creation, and personal development, sharing transformational stories from individuals who have achieved significant breakthroughs in their lives. Whether you are aiming to redefine your career, improve your relationships, or discover your true passions, this podcast is your partner in unlocking your full potential. Join me every week to hear from thought leaders, experts, and everyday heroes who share their practical strategies and heartfelt stories of success. If you are ready to unleash your potential, let's get started. This is the Life Coaching Podcast. I am Angel Gonzalez, and I am welcoming today Mehr Sayed, a grief coach. She is an entrepreneur whose life took an unexpected and transformative turn following the death of her husband 4 years ago. This was a personal loss that ignited passion within to help others navigate the complexities of grief. This passion led Mehr to become a grief coach. She defines her journey as a profound path of learning and growth, as aligned with her purpose to understand not only her own pain, but also how she could support others in finding renewed purpose and meaning in their lives after loss. Welcome to the Life Coaching Podcast, Mehr.
Thank you so much, Angel. It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is absolutely mine, and definitely my audience today is really thankful with you because the topic that we are working today, if it's an important subject that most people struggle with. Grieving is not just about when someone, some familiar, some loved person unfortunately pass away, but also we grieve when we lost a precious object. We grieve when we move a country. I am an immigrant and I have to go through a grief process as well because the separation from my country, from my family, bring different changes and challenges in the way. And during that time, I also lost some family members that make me grieve in a different way. And I know that thousands of people experience the same thing. So I'm welcome you today. And I am really grateful because we are going to work this topic from you as a grief coach. What is your approach to grief?
Okay, first of all, again, I have to thank you again, Angel, for having me here. And yes, like you said, this is a very um, important topic in terms of the fact that grief, on the surface, it's a universal response to, just like you said, losing something or someone that was once dear to us, but it's no longer with us. But the thing is that the pain, the heartache, the hurt, the sadness that we feel, which all we name as grief, it all comes up in the form of those emotions that we don't know how to handle to a point that it becomes so overwhelming that it starts affecting the quality of our life, the way we handle ourselves, the way we are living. So that is why it has been an experience also. And I really believe that if we are able to get in touch with those feelings, we may be able to cope in a better way, and which in turn is definitely going to improve the quality of our life, which is going to make us feel better about ourselves as a person, as an individual, even after the loss. And it will let us carry on our lives in a much better way. So this is what it is about. What all of my work is about is getting in touch with your feelings and honoring them.
Wonderful, wonderful. Grieving is also cultural. And we have at least, for example, 3,000 different religions all around the world that have different approaches to grieving, to the loss of a family member, of a loved ones. And when we talk about grieving, we face all these challenges, all these beliefs and cultural traditions. And when we are working with a client who is in the grieving process, and it's coming also with a specific background, maybe motivated by religion or motivated by any cultural group, how do you approach? What's the barrier that you find? What's the challenge that you find? And how do you approach to it?
Okay, now this is a very interesting question that you have asked, Angel. But the thing is that if you're talking about culture, even then, I believe that there are set norms about how a person should be grieving, or if a person has faced loss, what should they be specifically doing? There are norms about this in every society, specifically around the concept that it is something that maybe it has to be fixed, or maybe you have to move on from. This is like pretty much all the cultures. So the people, the society, they often they I wouldn't say pressurized, but well, they have this notion towards individuals that they have to somehow speed up their the moving on process, or maybe the healing process. So this can definitely put a pressure on the people who are grieving, and it can definitely lead to shame and isolation also. So overcoming all this means that people are more educated towards what grief really is, and how there are meaningful ways in which they can be supported, in which they can get in touch with their feelings, because it's not a linear process. Whichever culture you're in, it's going to take time. Sometimes people take years, maybe even lifetimes, to overcome the loss of something that they faced maybe early on in their lives. And some people, well, they're able to handle it in a better way, because as I said, that it's not a linear process, and it varies from person to person also. Because the thing is that the most common response when we lose something is that we ignore our feelings. And that is exactly what should not be done. We should never ignore our feelings. We should just let them be. Like whichever culture you're from, you should just let yourself honor those emotions, and just feel them. So this is basically the thing, that's the approach that needs to be taken when you're grieving. Otherwise, it's okay to absolutely okay to move on with your grief, like in ways that you can honor the memory. And because definitely grief and joy can coexist. So I mean, you can laugh while you were thinking about a loss of something.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. There is also different approaches to grieving. For example, one of the differences that we need to make here is that grieving is not just bereavement. Bereavement is the process in which we go through the recovery process or the recovery stage when we lose a family member, loved ones, when we lose a person. While grieving can be about anything and everything
Mm.
that make us
Yeah.
go through a process of recovery because we lost something. We are talking
Yeah.
about relationships. We are talking about jobs. We are talking about precious objects. We are talking about identity. So when we are talking about bereavement, we are talking about the process of recovery after losing some person in our life, after a loved one pass away. However, the acceptance of the fact is one of the main challenges that we experience as a human being. I believe there is where you pointed that we need to go to the process of moving on as well. And moving on, according to different studies and stages, also takes a few sets or a few steps going from the moment of the loss, the acceptance of the loss, to the recovery process. Do you want to explain to this audience what steps are for you the necessary ones that need to be taken in order to make this recovery absolutely successful?
Okay. Now again, this is another important question, Angel, but thank you so much for asking this, because I hope that this is able to clarify the process to some of the people who are listening to this. Okay. Like you said, I totally agree. We can grieve about so many things apart from losing a certain loved one. So many things that happen in a daily life, and it can be something very small and insignificant also, yet it was dear to us. That is why we feel the sense of loss, the sense of pain when it's no longer there. So the process starts there. Then when we lose something that was dear to us, but it's no longer there. But that is exactly the starting point, because the moment we lose that thing, there is a change in the reality of our life, the reality around us. the reality in which we are existing. And we, as human beings, well, we are kind of control freaks and we like to take control of things. And of course, our situation also is one of those things that we like to always stay in control. When we see that something we had or was with us is no longer with us, the first instinct is that, okay, what can we do to control it? So, not accepting the fact that that thing is no longer there is painful. Why? Because we don't want to accept that the situation has changed, although it has changed. Definitely when an entity is removed from the equation, the equation can no longer be balanced, it's disturbed. So what's the new balance? What's the new equilibrium? It has to be something new. Good or bad, that's another question. But it definitely has had changed. Something has changed, and it has brought some changes in our life, in ourselves. It has affected us. So the sooner we accept it, the better, because our healing journey and the journey we're going after grieving, the journey we're going on, it's going to start the moment we start accepting. So by accepting, I mean that we realize that we have a different life now, a life in which that thing or that person or that entity is not with us. But that does not mean that we cannot achieve or create or we are able to reach a new normal. There is definitely a new normal. It is, like I said, it's going to be something different, something we might never have experienced before, but it will be there. It can be achieved. Now, what I have to say, something very important is that whenever we take a step towards making ourselves feel better when we are grieving, it is going to be a conscious effort, because grieving is a universal response to losing something. I mean, we start grieving naturally, like any other emotion, like happiness, like sadness, like disappointment, like any other thing. So grieving is a natural response, and it will come when we lose, as we lose something. So if we have to think towards our betterment, towards coping, towards feeling better, it is going to be a conscious effort. But the people who start thinking about this, well, they're already towards that path, because awareness is also extremely important. Like if you're aware that, okay, I lost this and this thing or person, and I have been feeling like this since then, and I need to do something, or maybe I need to feel better, or maybe I deserve a better life. So when these questions start popping up in your mind, that means that, awareness has started, and awareness definitely is extremely important. And then I've talked about acceptance. Now we're talking about awareness. Then forgiveness is also another very important thing, that we need to relieve ourselves from any burdens or responsibility that we had anything to do with that loss. You know, it was circumstantial. Whatever happens, it was circumstantial, right? So in most of the cases, I'm thinking that if a person passed away or a thing got lost or an opportunity got missed, well, maybe it had to happen that way. Maybe we're in for something better. But the thing is that we are not controlling everything around us. We can only be answerable for our own actions. So if something happened in our world, in our life, so we may not be, directly responsible for that. There's no point in, beating yourself around the fact that, maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that. This is, again, normal human behavior. Most of the human beings succumb to this behavior when they lose something or someone, and they keep on playing these questions in their mind. What could I have done something that would not have led to me losing this thing or person? You know what? The thing is that whatever you would have done, well, the outcome would have been the same. That that person, that thing, their time was up. They had to go. They had to leave. The opportunity was someone else's. So we should start by forgiving ourselves also. This is extremely important, because if we have feelings of guilt or disappointment in ourselves, like maybe we could have done something to change that, no, that's not how this works. Whatever has to happen, it happens. So this is also one other thing. And this leads me to another very important point, which I emphasize always, whenever I talk, is that prioritize self-care. This is extremely
Before you
important.
jumping into that, Mehr, I think that's important for us to touch a bit deeply into those first 2 points, because you mentioned two specific keys that are transcendental, that are vital to the grieving process. You mentioned self-awareness, the first pillar of emotional intelligence. So a self-aware person is a person who is emotionally intelligent, and it's a person who is able to realize about their emotions, about their triggers, about their own well-being. So what's happening is, if you are a self-aware person, you are able to understand when you are in a process or a state of life in which things are not working for you anymore. For example, there are people who struggle the grieving process because they fall into anger or they fall into depression because the separation, the phenomenon of the separation, and the acceptance of this new reality that you mentioned before is not strong enough or is not educated in a personal level, so they struggle to go to the next level and become aware about what are the behaviors, what are the emotions, what are the feelings that they are having in that moment, and how to move from the stage one, which is whether anger or depression or frustration, to the stage two, which is becoming self-aware and realize, well, this maladaptive behavior or this issue that I am experiencing right now is not serving me more. How can I just take the next step to move to the next stage? And that one is absolutely linked to the second step that you mentioned, which is compassion. If you look back and how people forgive themselves, how you can be able to forgive yourself after anything that has happened in your life, after experiencing the loss of someone, or the loss of your job, or the loss of your relationship, or the loss, or even your identity when you are transitioning from one stage to another, that is coming from a state of compassion. And that compassion cannot arise when you are angry. Compassion cannot arise when you are frustrated. Compassion cannot arise when you are depressed. So these two particular keys that you just provided, I think, are necessary. They are absolutely necessary to allow the process of grieving happen. Because the grieving, and sometimes people believe that grieving is just about feeling. It's just about feeling whatever emotion you have, whether it's sadness or even melancholic feelings in which someone is missing and expressing and experiencing through emotions the missing of the person or object or the role that they were playing. And when you start with that particular stage in which you build self-awareness and then you allow to yourself to be compassionate about yourself, is when the grieving process actually starts. Is when you start moving from the anger or frustration or depression to the recovery process.
Yeah. Okay. You have explained it very well, Angel. The thing is that I believe the human beings have been created with all the answers. We just have to look inside. But the thing is that, again, talking about human nature, whenever we find ourselves in trouble, if things go wrong, we seek outside support. We look towards other people, towards other solutions, outer solutions. We don't look inside. We don't sit with our emotions. And just like you said, that's the first step. We have to let ourselves feel the emotions, let ourselves be, sit with the emotions, and just let them be. Like some people say that, when we are feeling very sad, we cry a lot. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. Just sit and cry as much as you want. But the thing is that why people have trouble moving on, and they are not really comfortable when they're grieving and all that, is because they don't allow themselves that space. They ignore. The first common response is you ignore. You just get up and carry on doing your stuff like any other day. You just ignore, even if you're feeling bad, if you're maybe missing that person badly. You don't take a moment to sit and miss, or maybe allow yourself to feel. Some people say that there are triggers, which of course there are triggers. Anything can be a trigger, and it can really sweep you off your feet in terms of whatever you're doing, and it can make your mind go anywhere, and it can distract you totally from the environment you are in, and it can detach you. This is how triggers are. But what happens is, when a trigger comes, you need to pause. You need to think. You need to allow all the emotions to come and feel, and just let them be. Sometimes, well, maybe for some people it does take a little bit longer to connect with their emotions if they haven't been doing this exercise ever in their life. But once you start doing it, it just takes minutes, sometimes even seconds, to connect with yourself, think, explore, and maybe come out of that state of distraction that you were put in when the triggering thing came in front of you. And other ways to make yourself feel better is you can write about it, journaling. And it does not have to be the conventional journaling. Like, you don't always necessarily have to take a paper and pencil and write everything down. I mean, I used to write everything all the time on my mobile, my notes, even stuff that I wanted to say to my husband, even when he had passed away, and I used to keep on sending him notes, knowing that there are no answers coming, which of course never came. But this process, this exercise, it really led me to feel better, to be more connected with my feelings, because I know that, I mean, with him gone, no notes were reaching him. But what was happening was I was putting my feelings in words, and when I was reading that later on, that gave me a perspective of where I was, what I was feeling at a certain point in time. And sometimes when, after maybe a week or a couple of weeks, I used to reread that note. I used to find it, oh, I was thinking like that at that time. Now this has changed. This is how I'm thinking now. So then again, some comparison of your feelings and all. This can be done. Another thing is extremely important, being mindful. Because whatever we are grieving about, well, it happened in the past. That time is gone now. And what will happen in the future, we're about to see that. That's the future. So what we have is the now. So bringing your focus to the now, I think that really helps a lot when you are grieving, because what happens then is that you single out all the unnecessary things, and when you focus just on this moment, like consider, for example, like take this moment, Angel. I think this is a perfect moment where I have all the things and all the resources for this moment to be perfect, because you invited me to this podcast. I am here. We are talking. That's it. We don't need anything else. I am not considering any third factor, nothing from the past that is hindering my process here in this moment. So this is the way we can be mindful, like just focusing on this. And my focus right now is just talking to you. Your focus, I think, is asking questions, and mine is to answer them, and that's it. That's just the process that's going on. So this is just a small example of how we can use mindfulness to, I don't know, maybe screen out the unnecessary thoughts that we feel that we let empower us. This is one way. And another important thing in the grieving process, never shy away for asking for help, from asking for help. You should always be able to, I mean, right now, up till now, I've been talking about stuff that we should be doing on our own. But, well, of course, the human society is based on these connections, in helping each other out, in having good relations. So that are definitely needed. And it's okay to reach out for help whenever you feel overwhelmed. It's okay to reach out to maybe your support groups, if you have, if they're friends, if they're relatives that you can talk about, and you can let the things that are heavy on your heart out to them, in front of them. And so this is okay. Whenever you feel ready, you should always ask for support.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's amazing that you mentioned it, because most of the time, one of the struggle that people experience in the grieving process, that even don't allow to the grieving process start, is tapping in the past. Look, I have a quote here from William Shakespeare that I would like to mention right now. He said, "Anyone can master suffering except the one who feels it." And I am totally agree with that. I agree with that 100%. And what's happening is, when people is in the suffering state, in the suffering moment, everyone around can say something like, "It's going to be okay. This is going to pass. This also is going to be another moment in your life." And I believe that the quality of our lives is the quality of every moment that we create for ourselves, that we experience for ourselves. So what's happening when a person is experiencing suffering? They are there. Whatever is going on around the world doesn't really matter to that person, because that person is experiencing that suffering. That person is feeling that suffering. But what's happening is, when people get stuck in that stage for too long, they don't allow the grieving process to pass. And I remember, for example, and this is important because culture have a huge influence over it. When we talk about bereavement, for example, I come from a family that I was raised in a Catholic family. And the grieving process for some members of my family were too long for me.
Okay.
When it's about bereavement, I am talking about bereavement, and it was a long process for them. We used to wear black. There is something that is called close bereavement, which is black from top to bottom. And that way, we were manifesting that pain. We were manifesting that experience, that feeling, that emotion that we had. But this, in some cases, could be too long. It was 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, because culturally, that was the belief. The belief was around how long a person need to grieve. So what's happening there is that after that period, after those years of grieving, after those years of let's say, being loyal to the pain or being loyal to the bereavement was when the recovering process started. So if that person decided to be in close bereavement for a year, it was a year of suffering,
Mhm.
sadness, expressing that emotion of missing that person. If that person that was grieving decided to make it 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, it was like that. So 10 years of bereavement, suffering, sadness. Whatever was happening in the around, whatever it was happening in the external world could be taken as the wrong thing because that person was in bereavement. And this is kept for many cultures nowadays that don't allow that grieving, that recovering process to start. What are your thoughts around it, and how do you approach to this issue with a client who might be influenced by such cultural practice?
Okay. The thing is, yeah, I totally agree that in different cultures, people tend to have different social norms when someone passes away. But you know, the thing is, the important thing to understand is that there is no timeline for grief. And as I mentioned earlier, also that every person has a different grieving process and a different grieving concept around grieving. But the important idea here in all of this, like if you mentioned that wearing black clothes or setting up a timeline for themselves, and that is also okay as long as it's making you feel okay. As long as the person is feeling, as long as they, you use the word honoring the grief, right? You use this that you know they select or decide upon a period of bereavement to honor the grief and all that. If they feel it's okay, and if they feel better going through that time, in whatever terms the behavior is, their lifestyle, the chosen lifestyle is, and all that, that's okay. But if it's hindering them, uh, as an individual, as a person who's trying to move on with their life in a normal way, in a way that is not compromising their own self care, their own mental health, their own well being, then that's something that should be looked into. Otherwise, if they want to grieve for, like wearing black clothes for a certain time period, and they feel that they're like, yeah, you know, that it's fine, you know, the process of grieving is fine in terms of they're moving on with their life also while grieving, and they're okay with this process, then it's fine. That's absolutely fine. So it differs for different people. I mean, and I think it comes down to an individual level in terms of how an individual is feeling after going through this process. If, for instance, I start doing something for the bereavement process, which I think, and it makes me feel extremely irritated and annoyed and out of place, and I feel it has a burden, or it does not let me take on the other the chores, or I don't know, the duties that I have to do in my life, then definitely it needs to be looked into. But if I am going through that certain norm or the certain thing that I decided to go with while grieving, and I feel okay, I feel fine, and I feel that I'm honoring the person that passed away, and I'm keeping the memory alive, or whatever my thought process is. If I'm okay with all that, then I think it's fine. To each their own.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you, Mer, and thank you very much for complementing this part because you said something that's key. If you are feeling well, if you are okay with whatever the timeline that you set up for yourself is, that's a healthy grieving. However, if you set a timeline for suffering, for expressing the pain, to keep holding that pain for X amount of time that you decide to it, that's something that might not be healthy in the grieving process, in the recovery process. So that's very important. And thank you very much for incorporating that idea, that part to the main idea. Now, I have a question for you, Mer, because grieving is sensitive process. It's a process in which each person has a different experience, a unique experience based on their beliefs, their values, how the loss actually happen. And if we talk about bereavement, for example, when the death of the person, the loved one, is something sudden, it's something unexpected, there is a first stage of shock. If the person experiencing the bereavement have not educated himself or herself to go through this process, that's something that could keep trapping that person for a long time in the first stage, which is the shock. We can find issues, for example, when the death is by violence or the death is by a nature disaster, which is unexpected and usually are issues that live in people a blueprint that is associated with the pain. On the other hand, when the grieving is coming from the loss of a role, let's say that someone lost a job and suddenly, unexpected, is fired or dismissed from the job, that person can be in a state of shock for a long time as well. And many people, the recovery process from losing the job under that circumstances could be really complicated, and mostly when there are a financial commitment associated with the loss of the income, for example, or the loss of the role. Usually navigating those transitions are challenging for many people. Also, there are people that love certain objects. You can associate a specific meaning to that object that's been in your family for generations. And losing that object can bring pain, can bring suffering, can bring all sorts of meaning in the life of that person. So the grieving process under these circumstances is unique, is challenging. It has its own characteristics in the life of someone. How do you approach in these cases?
Okay. When you talk about shock, that is more often than not about after things that were unexpected, that we were not planning, and they did not go according to maybe what we were thinking, or they just hit us out of the blue, and we just lost someone, unfortunately, due to maybe an accident or a tragedy or something like that. So that brings us again to the point that this is something that has changed our reality and which we were not accepting. Sorry, we were not expecting. We were not expecting this. That is why we went into shock, because then again, it messed with our reality. And, to deal with it, I have seen most people struggling with the people who are going through shock after losing someone or something suddenly. The main thing to understand here is there something I could have done about it? If we sit and ask this question, we put this question to ourselves, we will find the answer, because, well, I believe in most cases there's nothing that could be done. Because the thing is that, again, this brings us to the fact that we wanted to stay in control of the circumstances that we are in. And one other thing, yes, one very important thing is that this is an experience that we need to externalize. If something happened, we are not responsible for that. Especially if it was so sudden, so tragic that it left us in a shock, then definitely we are not the ones who created it. It happened in the environment, in the setting that we were in, So these are a few little things that we need to accept, and we need to, these are the reality checks that we need to focus on when something goes wrong or something does not go our way. So, and in the whole process, we have to keep holding space for ourselves. That is extremely important, because you know what? Like your question earlier, the thing is that when people face a loss, somehow this notion comes in mind that we don't deserve a good life anymore, or we don't deserve to be happy anymore, or we have to take this grief with us in a way that, we should always be grieving or feeling sad or feeling pain after something that has gone, or we just lost. That is okay, but that does not mean that we don't deserve a good life. We don't deserve happiness anymore. We don't deserve better things. So these are the things that definitely need to be thought about and worked around. And this is what happens when we lose something.
Yes, you are totally right on that. And that drives me to the next question. And what do you think are the top 5 or top 3 issues or activities that someone need to focus during the grieving process?
Okay. The number one thing that I have seen people who are grieving is I don't know why, refuse to have help. They feel that they don't need to, I don't even talk about it. Some people are not even willing to talk. So that is one thing which I think that this is one concept that I really believe people need to be more open to the idea of reaching out when they need help. Because, I mean, yeah, if you're grieving, some support is always good. It's always good in whatever form. So people should allow themselves to reach out, to ask for help whenever they're ready, whenever they feel like. So this is one thing that I have felt. Secondly, again, you were asking about the issues, right? The question is about issues. Can you please repeat the question?
Yes, I'm wondering, according to your approach and according to your practice, what are the top 3 or top
Issues.
5 practices, issues, or protocols that someone who is experiencing grieving, who is experiencing a loss, should focus to
Yeah.
accelerate that recovery process?
Yeah. Yeah. The second thing is that, Angel, we definitely need to prioritize self care, prioritize ourselves, put ourselves first. This is also another thing that I feel people doing. That this is like, I think it's the first thing that needs to be done, but they put it at the last number. They don't care about themselves anymore. Well, this happened with myself also. When I was going through those rough days, the first thing that took a toll was my health, both mental and physical. So yeah, this is one thing, and I've seen other people go through the same thing, make the same mistake of neglecting self care, of not thinking about themselves. Again, this brings me to the point which I mentioned earlier, that you do deserve. Everyone deserves a better life, and everyone deserves happiness, even after people around them have passed away. And finding that is not easy, but it's possible. It's doable. And the new normal will definitely be difficult, will be different from what it was before. But yeah, it can be achieved. It will be something. We just need to allow it to happen. So this is one issue where I feel that there's a lot of resistance, and people don't allow themselves to, be a recipient of all the good things that life, well, it has to offer to everyone. So this is one other issue. And the other issue that I have seen in grieving people is that, like you just mentioned, this timeline thing, and this is more so. It is something to do with the society norms also, that people also keep on coming up with the idea that so much time has passed, you should be moving on, you should be doing that. And yes, the grieving person does end up believing this idea that there is a timeline and they need to come out of this thing or feel normal or be okay or behave like any other person and all that. That's not necessary, uh, because this process is different for everyone. And I mean, if you just uh, you try to look up the grieving process, if you just Google this also, you will come up with so many models that tell you about the stages and all that. You know that in reality, what happens, Angel, is that it's not a neat, predictable shift from one emotion to another. You can be feeling shocked and in denial at the same time. You can be feeling angry and disappointed at the same time. So that being said, the thing is that it's not possible to really quantify the situation, this grieving process. So we just have to let it be, because the thing is that it's different for everyone, right? So everyone should give themselves this space to embrace this process, however it comes, whatever it is, for however long it is. There are no timelines. There's no right or wrong way. And it's about you feeling okay. Okay, like if you want to keep on grieving for something your whole life, that's okay, as long as it's not disturbing the quality of your life. It's not disturbing the people around you. That's also important. So yeah, these are the few things that I have noticed.
Yes, I agree with you on that, Mer, as well, because you mentioned something important that I want to talk a bit more about. I want to expand on this. You say predictable emotions. When we are talking about predictable or the unpredictable of the emotion that we experience in life, we are triggered by different things. Let's say, for example, when we are talking about grieving, not bereavement necessarily, but grieving, and you look at something that reminds you something else that is linked to that negative experience, that triggers something in our brains that is linked to that emotion that usually is negative. Conversely, when you find something that brings you joy in the past, and you encounter something similar that identify with that moment, that triggers something in your brain that is linked to that memory, and that make you feel joy again. So the unpredictable emotions or unpredictable responses are usually linked to those experiences that we have in life, to those memories and the meanings that we give to everything. I've worked with clients that, for example, when they see a car plate that is similar to something that remind something else, they are triggered by certain emotions. Or maybe there are people who look at a specific number. That number has some meaning for their life. And when they encounter suddenly, unexpectedly, with that number, that trigger, that emotion which is linked to that. Or something else happening in the environment that trigger the memory, that bring the memory back of a joyful moment, then joy is expressed in that particular moment because it's something unexpected, automatic, just happened. Now, as I said before, I believe that the quality of our lives is the result of the quality of the moment, each moment that we experience. if we are conscious about the emotions that we want to experience in our life, about the results that we want to experience in our life, if we are conscious about every single moment, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, living the present moment with full awareness and full focus on what's happening and what you want to get out of that moment. If it's joy, is knowledge, is wisdom, is just experience the moment, passion, maybe. So if you are able to predict the emotion that you want to experience, and you're able to create in the grieving process a path not based on the dozen different models that's been created by absolutely accomplished psychologists and psychiatrists, but based on your own experiences, your own desires, your own goals. Create that path consciously, make it predictable. What do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? And create those moments for yourself to feel yourself with joy, happiness, and allow that recovery to happen.
This is a beautiful question, Angel, and um, I'm really excited to answer it because this is one of the approaches that I use when I'm working with people who are grieving. Because I love the subject of positive psychology, which is basically based on all these principles that you were talking about. That it's about more on bringing your focus on the positives. And in this case, in terms of people who are grieving, in terms of people who have faced loss, who are passing through these heavy emotions, it's about bringing your attention to your own positive traits as a person. Like we are quick to find faults in ourselves and in others, like the bad traits, the negative traits. We're like quick to highlight and all that. So why not the positives? And talking about positives, let's start with our own self. Think about our own positive traits. Like if let's say if a person is kind, when was the last time they were kind? So why not plan being kind? Why not plan being a good deed with someone? Because mostly when we are planning something, planning using one of our good traits, it does involve another human being. And when you are involving another human being doing something good, making them feel good, well, the feeling that you get is priceless. And not to say that all these exercises or doing all these things are somehow going to diminish your grief or make it vanish. No, it's not that. But grief, whatever it is, however heavy it is an emotion. So what we can do in parallel, we can consciously try to create other emotions for us by doing certain acts, by focusing on the positives, by bringing out the good in us, by using our positive traits, so that some other emotions we are consciously creating that are making the quality of our lives better in the end. So, this is exactly, definitely something that can be done. Yeah, this is very doable.
Life mastery is the ultimate tool for discovering your real self and healing from any personal constraint that might hinder your growth. The purpose of this journal is to nurture your mental health and foster a space of self development, self awareness, and self love, which can impact positively your thoughts, actions, and behaviors. Embark in this exciting world of personal growth by committing to answer a handful of daily questions designed to guide you through a path of development, happiness, and fulfillment. Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you very much for that answer, Mehr. I am really passionate about positive psychology, NLP. That's part of my approach as well. I love to see positive outcomes when I work with my clients. One of the protocols that I actually implement is bringing people to become aware about what they are actually doing, what they are actually experiencing, and how it's serving to their lives. And grieving is a process in which most of the time we work unconsciously.
Hmm.
Most of the time when people don't allow themselves to receive the support, the help, and the guidance from people like you who want to help people recover in a healthy way from the loss, that people usually work their own process in autopilot. And whatever is set up in that hardware, and I am talking the brain, I am talking the nervous system, whatever is already set up in that hardware is what actually run the behavior, the actions, the emotion of the person. Conversely, when the people decide to seek for help, support, and guidance to navigate the challenges of grieving, to navigate the challenges of bereavement, then the process is healthier and they allow things to happen in a better way and get a positive result out of it.
Mhm.
So this is very important. We are coming to the end, but before we say goodbye to this episode, I want to know more about your story because I think that your story is very important. Your own loss was a catalyst for becoming a grieving coach, for seeking people and help people to overcome their own loss, to go through the bereavement process in a positive way and get a positive outcome out of the loss. I want to know, how did you come to this realization and how was received by your own community, your own family in the process of turning yourself into a life coach, a grieving coach, and bringing positive results for people that are experiencing any type of loss?
Okay. Thank you very much for asking this, Angel. Yeah, the thing is that, like you mentioned in the introduction of this episode, is that I lost my husband tragically due to sudden heart attack 4 years ago. And since, as shocking as this tragedy was, it was a life changing event for me and my children. And like so many others who passed through this, a loss similar to this, we were left clueless with no idea how life was going to go on. It was very shocking and very hard to believe and very painful for me and my children. And after that, well, I went down the usual route to grieving that even in my culture also, yeah, women are supposed to grieve for a certain time. And that, of course, affects your mental well-being also. I mean, feeling isolated, feeling like no one understands you and all that. And I, for one, have been been in that experience. I know how isolating all this experience is. So one thing that I really felt was missing was the emotional support. Not that I didn't have relatives or friends or people or well-wishers around me; they were all there. But the thing is that where I found a gap was that people who have not gone through something similar, who have not faced a similar loss, they don't know how to connect with you on a level that is going to make you feel better. Sometimes they don't even have the right words. And this is how, well, this is how, the society is and all that. We can't really blame other people. They're all coming from a place of concern. But this was a certain gap that I found, that emotional support, like the right kind, is sometimes missing around people who lose someone or something. But during the early time, I thought that my life was also over. I mean, there's nothing left for me, even though I have kids, and yeah, I was always there for them in the best way possible. But in all the process, I put myself at the end, like, behind everything. I mean, I was thinking that, I had nothing left for me to make myself go on and live the life. And yeah, it's game over for me. But you know what happened? My health started going down, and I was mentally in a, well, not so good place. And because the thing is, Angel, that life doesn't stop. If I am thinking that I need to stop or I'm stopping, it is only going to hurt me in the end. When I'm the only one who will be affected. So this went on till a time that it became so overwhelming that I couldn't really function anymore. So that was a moment of realization or transformation, whatever I call it now. Then I realized that, no, this cannot go on and this has to stop. And I need to get up and see what my life is now and accept. The day I asked myself to accept my situation was the day when things started changing. Because then I accepted that, yes, my husband is no longer here. He's not coming back. And I have a new life now. And I'm a different person now in this life. So, whatever this life is, I need to get up and see how I can make things better for myself and the people around me. Because you know what? If I am doing good, if I'm feeling better, that's better for the people around me also. I mean, how am I going to connect with people on a good level if I'm not in a good place, if I'm not feeling fit and fine? So that, I think, is extremely important. And then, of course, when I started looking into holding more space for this process, for allowing ourselves to connect with our emotions, this is when I came across coaching and grief coaching. And I found the concept to be very positive in terms of moving forward and taking that next step towards your goals once you set the goals. So this is extremely important when you're grieving. And so this is how I became a grief coach. And yes, your question, how the people around me, how the community, well, what was their reaction? The thing is that, Angel, to be honest, I started this thing to help or work around people who have lost their spouses, because I felt that, I mean, I felt them, I can relate with the pain and the loss that they face. But the thing is that during my journey, I have been met with all sorts of people who have approached me with all kinds of grief, just like you mentioned in the start, that anything can give you grief. So I then came to the realization that grief being a universal emotion, it affects everyone and in every way. So I believe now that everyone's grief needs to be included. So today I work with all sorts of people who have grief of any sort. And yeah, I did primarily started working for people who lost their spouses, just as I mentioned. But now I believe that everyone's grief needs to be looked into, and everyone needs that. Everyone deserves that compassion and that support when they're grieving.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing this part of your story, because your personal story is emotional, is sensible. It drove you to a different stage of life, which is the following the mission of helping people to go through this process in a healthy way and get a positive outcome out of the bereavement. So thank you very much for being there, and thank you very much for taking that mission, to carrying that mission on your hands, because I know that there are thousands and thousands of people out there waiting someone who can support them and guide them into this process. Mehr, where can people find you to work with you?
Yeah, they can DM me on my Facebook and my Instagram profiles. I'll share the links with you.
Absolutely. So the information to get in contact with Mehr Sayed is going to be available in the information box of this episode. And also, if you have questions about how to work with Mehr, you can contact me directly and I will connect you with her. Absolutely. Mehr, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you today. It's been a pleasure coming to work over this topic. This is an important topic, and every day that we can do something to help someone else to go through this process in a better way, in a healthy way, is an accomplished day. Final thoughts, Mehr, about bereavement and grieving process?
Yeah, first of all, I have to thank you, Angel, for letting me here and allowing me in this digital space where I came and said all these things, which I think are important and need to be heard. So the final thoughts, again, I will come to the point that we need to prioritize ourselves. We need to prioritize self-care, because that's extremely important. This is the message that I give everyone every day, every time I'm asked this question, because this is extremely important, because we all deserve a happy life. We all deserve the best. We all deserve as much joy as we can, and we all deserve the best. So we need to allow ourselves to receive.
Beautiful, beautiful. Self-care, wellness, and taking every strategy that you can apply in your own life to go through the grieving process healthier is the main thing that we can all do in order to prioritize our health and go with a positive outcome after or on the other side of the grieving process. Thank you very much, Mehr, for being here with me. I am Angel Gonzalez, and this is the Life Coaching Podcast. I believe in you. I believe in your unlimited capacity to create the results that you want to improve the quality of your life. See you on the next episode. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Life Coaching Podcast. I hope that today's episode has empowered and inspired you to take bold steps towards your own personal and professional breakthroughs. If you found value in today's stories and insights, please share this episode with your friends and family, because your feedback fuels my mission to bring you even more impactful content. And next week, I will continue to explore the amazing potential within ourselves. Until then, keep striving, keep dreaming, and keep moving forward towards your best life. I am your host, Angel Gonzalez, and this is the Life Coaching Podcast.